What's that old saying? If you hang around squirrels too much, you get hit by nuts, something like that. Well, that's essentially NASCAR super speedways. Big crashes happen, and you can avoid it. Every once in a while, you'll avoid one. Maybe you'll avoid two, but if you stay too close to the squirrels, if you stay in that pack too long, you're going to get involved eventually, and that's essentially what happened to Shane Van Gisbergen tonight. So tonight we went to Daytona. Shane Van Gisbergen, in fact, this is the first oval he has returned to. It's only the second track, well, technically the third track he's returned to. Indianapolis he went back to, but he ran the road course in 2023 and then the oval in 2024, so that's different. Does that really count? But of course, the first track he ever went back to, the second time he ran a NASCAR car at a track, was Chicago, the street race. He had some familiarity. Obviously, he won there in 2023 in Cup, so he knew what he was doing. Well, Daytona, a little bit of a different story. Back in the spring, back in February, he finished 12th in that race despite being involved in a couple single car incidents. Well, today we saw a lot of multi-car incidents, some which SVG avoided, and then ultimately at the end he was taken out in one, essentially. So Shane Van Gisbergen qualified 19th for this race. And Daytona, we talked about it back in February, but in case you need a reminder, it's a 2.5 mile, which is equivalent to 4.02 kilometers. And it's a high-banked racetrack in Daytona Beach, Florida, where NASCAR started. The history of NASCAR is so strong at Daytona. The headquarters are actually in Daytona for the NASCAR, like actual NASCAR. The corporation is actually based in Daytona. But anyways, it's a high-banked super speedway racetrack. We've talked about Daytona kind of the last couple of weeks, how Indianapolis and Michigan with the engine packages they were running, it was kind of a hybrid of Daytona and intermediate track. Well, no, Daytona and Talladega, they are their own thing. They are super speedways, a little bit less horsepower, a restrictor plate, a tapered spacer, something to restrict the airflow, something to lower the power, because if they ran these things wide open, they'd be going way too fast and be way too dangerous. They still get up 185, 190, I believe, miles per hour in the Xfinity series. But you're all racing in a pack. We can see at times 20 cars within 1 or 2 seconds of each other. It's crazy, this style of racing. This is the entertainment part. This is what you see in the highlight reels, the commercials, the big crashes. 20 cars all flipping into, not all flipping into the wall, but all the crazy chaos that you see. This is Daytona. And for some of these guys, it could be their last chance to make the playoffs, since it's the last real super speedway before the playoffs for Xfinity. Now 4 races to go. But the point being is, we see a lot of chaos at Daytona. We see a lot of chaos at Talladega. It's the main talking points of these types of races. They are wild card races. Some of these lower funded teams have a shot of winning or at least getting a very competitive finish, whereas at a Texas, at a Darlington next week, they'll run in the 20s once again. But at Talladega and Daytona, they have a shot of a top 5, top 10, even a win sometimes. And it can be season altering. It can be life changing for some of these teams. And as for some of the bigger teams, it's just an opportunity for more points, playoff points. We see the playoff bubble get impacted. But point being, Daytona, Talladega, different animal. But Shane Van Gisbergen, as I said, in the spring, finished 12th despite being in multiple incidents. And then we go on to Talladega. Talladega, he leads a few laps and that thing runs out of fuel late. He ran at the top 10 for a good chunk of that race. But as I said, with the fuel issues, they end up finishing like 20th or something. I can't remember the exact result. It was about 20th. And then coming into today, I actually had a little hope for SVG. I thought a potential competitive finish was possible. A top 10, maybe even a top 5. And thanks to the chaos of Super Speedway, hey, maybe even the first oval win. Well, I don't think SVG cracked the top 10 once. They had a lot of problems with the car early in the race. Something was wrong with the steering. I don't want to start a conspiracy, but Austin Hill had steering issues. I think another Chevrolet had steering issues. So I don't know if it was a Chevrolet thing. I don't know if it was just a lack of practice in qualifying, because for these super speedway races in the Xfinity and Cup Series, they literally only get 1 lap. You get 1 lap to qualify the car. That's it. No practice, no multi-lap qualifying. You get 1 lap. So if you have any problems with your car, you better discover it during that 1 lap, or, well, you're going to have some problems on Sunday or Saturday, or I guess in this case, Friday. So ultimately, they had to do some long pit stops. They sat at the back of the pack, essentially, the majority of the day, just running laps. I mean, seriously, that's just what they did. They ran 22nd, 25th all day behind the pack, just waiting for him to wreck because he couldn't really make any moves because the car was so ill handling. And, well, once they finally got the car fixed up, he was able to make some moves. He was able to get up a little bit, got up to as high as 15th, I want to say. And that's when the first incident happened. Brandon Jones went spinning down the racetrack in SVG. Well, Code Brown moment. He avoided any damage, avoided any contact, but when you see a car flying in front of you at 200 miles an hour, I think your life flashes before your eyes maybe a little bit. So, yeah, he ended up being fine. That was incident number 1 that he avoided. Good job on the wreck avoidance. And then the second one, I for sure thought he was done in this one. I thought he had crashed, car was done, but no. Just a little tap at some point in there, but no. Look at this replay. This is crazy. We got a giant crash. Normal Daytona going into turn 1 crash. Everyone's wrecking, everyone's spinning, and Shane Van Gisbergen's just hard on the brakes and just swerving. Just trying his best. Somehow, some way, no damage. I don't know how to explain it. I really don't. And as I said, some of these Talladega Daytona races, you will get either extremely lucky or you'll just like perfectly time out a wreck. And sometimes it's like you think you're clear and then you get clipped at the last minute, or you're perfectly fine and you're like, how did that happen? And then eventually, if you keep putting yourselves in the situation, or if you stay in the middle of the pack, it catches up to you. And that's what happened. With about 6 laps to go, Anthony Alfredo had a tire going down, something wrong with his car, and everyone's trying to avoid him. And when everyone's trying to avoid him, 2 cars try to fit into one place and spinning, crashing. Next thing you know, the 97 car is in it. So ultimately, disappointing result, I would say, for Shane Van Gisbergen. Once again, it's only his second race with his new crew chief. They're still learning each other, learning the setups and learning how to communicate with each other. But at the same time, it's Daytona. This kind of thing's going to happen. You're going to get involved in crashes. You're going to narrowly avoid crashes. It's the style of racing. And yes, you got to learn it. And yes, it's one of the things that is a normal thing in NASCAR, because we see this type of racing in the Cup Series side now 6 times a year. So you have to be somewhat good at it to, help your season. And I'm not saying SVG's bad at it. As I said, he was competitive at Talladega. He had his moments at Daytona earlier in the spring. But if you have a bad race in one race, you'll be fine. Like in terms of the points, yeah, it hurts that. And SVG's already locked in the playoffs, but it does make the top 10 the points a long shot. But as I said, like in the grand scheme of things, he'll be fine. Super speedway racing, I don't like using this word for it, but it's one of the easier types of tracks to learn. Learning the draft is difficult, learning which line to pick, when to take a run, when not to take a run. That's all difficult stuff in the aerodynamics and having to learn that, but sometimes it just becomes a crapshoot. Sometimes people wreck and there's nothing you can do about it, and ultimately, as I said, there's really nothing you can do about it, and, well, at least he made it through the majority of the race. No stage points scored on the day, finished 25th at the end. As I said, not much to say here. I mean, I guess I talked for, 10 minutes now, so I guess there was a little bit to say. But anyways, pretty forgetful day for Shane Van Gisbergen. Next week is Darlington. It'll be his first ever non-super speedway oval to return to. One of the more difficult tracks in NASCAR. We'll see how he does in that one. And, well, see you guys in the next video. He is running in the Cup Series tomorrow. I should have said this at the beginning of the video, but he is in the Cup Series race tomorrow, and he will be in the Cup Series races for the next 4 races. That's right, Daytona, Darlington, Atlanta, and Watkins Glen, Shane Van Gisbergen will be racing in all of those races. He will be in 7 of the last 12 Cup Series races, so he will be doing a lot of double headers because, well, they're putting him in the Cup car more because you can guess why he's running that car more. Nothing official yet, but it's anticipated. Thanks for watching this video. Once again, I will see you guys tomorrow for the Cup Series race at Daytona. Should be a fun one.